Welcome to the Positive Spiritual Living Podcast, brought to you by Unity on the Bay. This is your positive path for spiritual living.
All right, it looks like we are live on the interwebs. My name is Jason Weeks. I'm a staff member at Unity on the Bay, and I am joined here this morning with Christian de la Huerta. Wave hi, Christian. And we'll get to introducing him more formally later, but right now we're just going to give everybody a few moments to settle in. Share this feed on your Facebook pages so that you can share the wisdom that we're going to talk about later with the world. And we're going to get started in just a few moments. Good morning, Chris Jackson, one of my favorite people in the world. He just joined us. Good morning. Hey, good morning. So we'll just wait a few moments. I don't know, Christian, if you got tea, but I got some tea up in here.
I got some water. I didn't even make the connection about tea time and getting tea.
It's all good.
We wait, Jason, what can you talk a little bit for those of us who would like to know? Are you guys doing services, live services yet? What's the time frame? What do you know?
Yeah, well, I'm the one who asks the questions here on Tea Time. But that is a good question. So we formed a task force a while ago because, as you can imagine, there's a lot to do when you reopen. And so we've settled on a tentative date of November 29th of reopening. But until then, we have a ton of classes and our services are online. Our biggest concern is just keeping people safe.
Sure, of course.
And making sure that we're not contributing to the spread of coronavirus. So
yeah, of course. Yeah, I haven't had any live events either since March.
Yeah.
And what about the school? Are you still at the temple?
Yeah, we are. We're still at Temple Israel. Our dear friends at Temple Israel. It's been a great space for us, and we're going to continue on there until we find the right and perfect new home, as our affirmation goes. So, some things or all things we have to leave to God. And so we're doing our work and letting God do its work.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that our new home will materialize when it's time.
Yeah.
All right. So I see we're getting quite the audience here. I just want to say good morning to Carla. Good morning, Caro, Dale, Michelle. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Francesca. Good to see you. If you're just joining us, this is Tea Time. My name's Jason Weeks. I'm a staff member at Unity on the Bay, and I'm joined with Christian de la Huerta. Wave hi again, Christian.
Happy Saturday, everyone.
Happy Saturday. I'm reporting from Fort Lauderdale, and Christian's reporting from Miami. A very windy and wet South Florida today. So why don't we get started? So, like I said, this is Tea Time. You see here, I have my big cup of tea. And what Tea Time is just a casual conversation with spiritual leaders and spiritual authors. And the way it goes is I'll be asking Christian some questions throughout Tea Time. And as you're listening, you get to ask your questions too in the comments section. And we'll stop and take those questions periodically. And we'll go on for about 45 minutes, and then that's it. So I want to introduce our guest this morning. Again, his name is Christian de la Huerta. And with 30 years of experience, Christian is a sought-after spiritual teacher, personal transformation coach, and leading voice in the breathwork community. He has traveled the world offering inspiring and transformational retreats, combining psychological and spiritual teachings with lasting and life-changing effects. He's also award-winning and critically acclaimed author, speaking at numerous universities and conferences, and on the TEDx stage. More information about his work may be found at soulfulpower.com. So please help me welcome our guest today, Christian de la Huerta. Good morning, Christian.
Hey, good morning. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. I know you've been a longtime friend of Unity on the Bay. And I've been, a long time, longer than me, I think. And I've been to several of your breathwork workshops at the Goddess Temple, as you call it, out in, what is that, Coral Gables?
Coconut Grove.
Coconut Grove. I was close.
Yeah, we're neighbors with the Gables.
Yes. So Christian just came out with a new book, and here it is. I've had the pleasure of reading it, starting to read it in the past couple of weeks, and it's called Awakening the Soul of Power. And I don't know if you can see the tagline there, but it says, How to Live Heroically and Set Yourself Free. Wow, what a timely book this is, I must say. And I want to start off by asking you, Christian, what was your inspiration for writing this book?
You know, it's funny that you talk about the timeliness of it, because I've been working on it probably for 8-10 years, on and off, of course, not all the time. And I'm actually, without minimizing the tragedy of it and the pain of it and the trauma of it, I'm really grateful for the COVID mandatory timeout, because it's the first time in probably 30 years that I have been stationary in one place for 6 months, which is what allowed me to finish the book. And so over the last few years, from time to time, I'd wonder, wow, this is taking so long. Have I missed the window of opportunity for this book? That kind of second guessing that we do sometimes. Mm-hmm. And come to find out that, wow, I couldn't, from my limited perspective, I couldn't have figured out a better timing. Like, what better time to be talking about what it means to be a hero, and how to embody and express everyday heroism, and to talk about power than now. So what inspired it is, it's paraphrasing Einstein, who said something to the effect of that we can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness in which it was created. So, when I look at the world and all the challenges, I mean, they're just the incredible challenges that we face. I think, it's almost so much and so overwhelming and so critical that I think the only way that we're going to dig ourselves out of this hole that we have collectively dug ourselves into, it has to be thinking outside of the box. It has to be like, in my experience and my perception of it, a spiritual revolution, like a revolution in consciousness. So then that's what drives the book, right? Like, sometimes I get so overwhelmed when I think of like, what can I do about the environmental crisis, or the radical polarization in this country and in the world? How do I communicate with the terrorists or a really fundamentalist who thinks that I'm, satanic? Like, how do we bridge those gaps? And then all, the poverty and war and all of it. It's like, I'm just going to go to the beach and have a lot of sex and have a lot of dark chocolate. And then I think, whoa, slow down. All right. What can I do? Right. So like, reel myself back. What can I do? And the answer inevitably is continue to wake myself up, continue to remember who we really are, continue to free myself, and to help as many people as I can to do the same. Okay, I can do that. I can do. And so that's what the book is about. It's sort of a guide, a primer to help people resolve. We have such a conflicted relationship with power, ambivalent relationship with power. We want it, but we're afraid of it. And we think, I think that most of us are subconsciously or consciously in some cases afraid that we're going to abuse it. And so we run away from it. We sell out on it. And then we're so conflicted to avoid conflict and to avoid the emotions, that we stuff ourselves and we stuff our truth and we swallow our truth, and we sell out on our power for the illusion of morsels of pseudo love, because we fear rejection, because we fear that, like, if we really be all of who we are, that people wouldn't be able to handle us, and we might, our relationships might end. So we limit ourselves and put ourselves in tiny little boxes, and we just ain't got time for that. We don't.
Let me hit the pause button right there. So if anybody listening, if that sounds like you, or you do that in your life, put a thumbs up on this, like, or make a comment in the section. If that sounds like you, Christian, it sounds like you're talking right to me. Yeah. So, like, for me, I have these grand ideas of who I can be and what I can do in my life. And then I'm like, I shrink to it, because sometimes it's overwhelming to think, well, I'm going to have to change everything about myself to be this person. And it's like, it's scary. And maybe that's the ego at play, which we'll get into later.
Delete the maybe.
I guess that's paybacks for me being sassy earlier, right? So I want to read from your book something that I thought was amazing, and I'll preface it with saying that oftentimes, I know for myself, when I talk about heroes, my mind automatically goes to, somebody who has done the unbelievable in their life, or something just so amazing that people call them heroes. But in your book, you go into the stuff that heroes are made of, and I want to read some of those things right now, because they really struck me. And they really hit home for me. So this is on page 6 and 7 of Christian's book, and I'll just pick them at random. Being who we are, wherever we are, having the courage to be authentically and congruently ourselves to the fullest in every situation, no matter what others may think, that's the stuff of heroes. Pushing through laziness, risk aversion, and the desire for comfort and safety in order to step into our authentic life's purpose. Growth does not happen in the comfort zone. That's the stuff of heroes. Keeping our emotional heart open no matter what. Love your enemy. Remains as radical a message today as it was 2,000 years ago. The heart center cannot be closed selectively. That's the stuff of heroes. And you go on probably for 20 more items about what makes up a hero. And it just really, it hit me. I was like, you're right. These things are acts of heroes in everyday life. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, I was so touched to hear you read those, because I think it's the first time that I hear those words not inside my head, that I hear them audibly, not coming out of my mouth. So that's very beautiful. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's what you're saying. That's the book is the first part of a series of calling all heroes. Like, what does it mean to live heroically in the 21st century, when we don't have the horse hitched outside and the armors and the demons to slay, except the ones that are in here. And so what you're reading is what I call my litany of heroism, because most of us, like you were talking about, when we think of heroism, we externalize it, right? So we think of a warrior, a first responder, somebody who places their life at risk for the sake of someone else or for a larger cause. COVID has kind of forced us to expand what that means. And so now we include in heroism our healthcare practitioners, our doctors, our nurses, the respiratory therapists, and the grocery store clerks and the delivery people who at some points have placed their health at risk to make sure that everything keeps going. But what about the rest of us? We live in such a chaotic time of uncertainty that we could say that maintaining center, maintaining a sense of who we are, maintaining equanimity in the face of all this insanity around us, that alone is an act of heroism. And yeah, that litany goes on to say, is like, and so much of it is connected to understanding what the ego mind is and how it works. But reacting, right? Like, we're so used to, like, somebody hurts us and then we hurt them back, right? Or somebody, that says something to us and we interpret it, or our ego mind interprets it as an attack, we defend, right? That's, anybody can do that. It's a reactive thing. It's what the ego mind does. Mm-hmm. To have, first of all, the presence, to notice it and to make a choice, right? To introduce the element of choice. Mm-hmm. And to say, oh, ouch, that one hurt. How do I choose to show up in the situation? How do I choose to respond to this person? So that I get off this merry-go-round, this boring merry-go-round, right? That we've done 1,000 times. They do this, we do that. Boring, right? So how do we get off of it? Is but we introduce choice, right? And we don't wimp out, right? It doesn't mean that we become a doormat, or that we stuff our emotions, or that we sell out on our power. Of course not. That's what we're talking about. How to do a journey of empowerment. So we get to express our truth. We get to express all of our emotions, including anger, right? Which is the one that most of us are terrified about. So we get to access all those emotions, to communicate them, but we do it at choice, and we do it gracefully. And what that means gracefully is that not just dumping, like just not having a tizzy fit, like, or a total meltdown, like a child, mm-hmm. but communicating our emotions courageously and compassionately in a way that the other person can hear it, right? That's heroic. That's nothing short of heroism.
Yeah, it's heroic, and it takes, what I'm hearing is practice and being present. Yeah. Because if you're wanting to communicate with somebody in a way that they can hear it, you have to know a little bit about somebody, or be able to connect in that moment. That takes me actually to one of my questions that I wrote down, and that is, you talk a lot about the ego. Is the ego our enemy, and is it something that we can live without or eventually escape from?
That's such a good question, Jason, and a big question, and the whole first part of the book, the whole first quarter, or maybe even quarter of the book, is about the ego. And it's really important that we understand the ego mind. The ego, it's, we can think of it as it's a part of the mind that makes sense of sensory information, can reach into the past, project into the future, and somehow weave all of that into a coherent sense of self. This is Christian, that's Jason, right? So it's an illusion, ultimately, and it's both a leap in evolution and the source of all our suffering. As far as we know, we're the only species that has a sense of self, right? That's what Homo sapiens can be translated at. Humans who know that we know. So it's that ego is that self-reflexive consciousness, what allows us to reflect back upon ourselves, which is why we're so successful. We can learn so much as a result of that. It's also the split in consciousness, right? It's the first time that we had Ken Wilber, who writes beautifully and very intensely about this stuff. It's densely, he writes very densely, but he says that humanity hasn't always had an ego. We haven't always had a sense of self, an individual sense of personality. Once that developed in us, that's what at one point where we're at one with all creation, like all the other species on the planet. Once the ego came in and develops in us, it's the first split in consciousness. So now it's like, yes, it's great to have a sense of who we are, and it's also the source of all our pain, right? It's the reason we take things personally. The reason that now we can feel lonely, now we can feel abandoned. So we have abandonment issues. Now we have a sense of our own mortality. So it's intense. It's a price to pay for having a sense of individuality. So there's some teachings, which is what you're pointing to, that say that you got to kill the ego, because it's artificial separation, because it's the source of all our suffering, which is true. My understanding of it is that as long as we're in a body, in this third dimensional reality, that we need to have an ego, right? And that is not all bad. There's some really good things about having an ego, about having a sense of self, and there's some functions that it does that are really helpful. So my understanding of it is what we're going for is not killing it, not getting rid of it, but taking it out of, but healing it, mm-hmm. so that we're not at the effect of other people who are always finding our unhealed areas and pushing our buttons, and that's what causes us to react. So doing the work of healing it so that anybody can push that old button and nothing happens, because I worked through that. And removing it from the place that the ego has hijacked, right? The ego has gotten confused, and it has placed itself as the sun rather than the sunbeam that it is to the sun, right? So what we're going for is healing it and removing it from its place. And hey, you don't get to mess with me in that way, right? All those voices of insecurity on the numbers that we do on ourselves, the self-inflicted mind Fs that we do on ourselves, that's all the ego, right? That's so what we learn to do as we understand what the ego mind is and how it works is how to navigate it and how to give it some clear boundaries. That hey, no, you don't get to make that choice. I'm making that choice, right? Because all the ego, we allow the ego to make all these important choices that you were also talking about. Do I go on that coffee date? Do I go on that job interview? Do I leave in this relationship? Do I start a new one? Do I take that job that requires that I move to a different city and leave my family and friends? So we make these big choices from it's very tiny and limited and always fear-based perspective. So, go ahead.
No, it was just, so the ego makes decisions based on fear.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing you say. Yeah. Yes. So if what you're saying is true and there's the ego and there's like this separation, what is the other part of us? Is that our soul? Like what is that? And can you talk, I know you also talk about the soul in your book. What is the soul? What do you think the soul is?
That's a great question too, and that's a great way to frame it. What do I think, right? Because none of us really know. But here's a great metaphor that is often used when teaching the ego. If we put a baseball in the center of a stadium, that's what the ego is. Who we are is actually the stadium, and we've allowed this tiny part of who we are to think that it is all of who we are. And again, to make all these choices from its fear-based and tiny perspective. So the soul, who we are, is the freaking stadium, right? Call it the soul, call it higher self, call it whatever you want to call it, right? It's our own piece of sacred real estate.
I love that. It's our own piece of sacred real estate.
Yeah.
I'm smiling because I feel like this grin on my face is like, it's like my soul smiling because it's like recognizing truth.
I got chills on that one.
And I also like, when I have a nice hearty laugh at things, I feel like it's the same. It's like my soul like laughing, like, yeah, that's true. Like you're finally waking up to realize what is true. But as you're talking about this vast stadium, which I love that analogy, immediately I feel this fear of living that way, like living in this vastness, but allowing something else to control my life. And I guess that's the ego, like wanting to take control.
Yes.
Saying you can't let God or the universe take control of your life. That would be too scary. Like what happens if God or the universe says, well, this relationship isn't for you and you need to leave it, or this job isn't for you and you need to leave it. And you're just like, ugh, that's so scary. Like, can you speak into that? Like, yeah, living in the stadium instead of this baseball.
Yes, it is scary to the ego, right? Because the ego is this micromanaging control freak, trying to control not only every part of our lives, but everybody else's lives around us. And it's futile. It's insanity, right? There is nothing controllable about life, period. Nothing. So it's like, what a thing to take on. So yes, to the ego, control freak ego, it is scary. Change is scary. Part of his job is to maintain the status quo and holds on to the status quo, even when the status quo is miserable. It doesn't care. Right? So wherever the status quo is on the spectrum from comfortable to miserable, it doesn't care. Its job is to maintain things the way that they are, and anything that threatens that is going to be scary to the ego. Anything that symbolizes change to the ego, it's scary. So yes, that's how the ego works. What is scarier to me, infinitely scarier to me, is that another year goes by, another 5 years, another 30 years go by, and we're still stuck in small, little ego-based lives, and that we're still stuck in playing small, and that we're still stuck in relationships or jobs or lives that are, or life circumstances that are sucking the very life force out of us. That's a lot scarier than the unknown.
In just a few moments, I'm going to ask you to maybe share one of your life experiences where you put the ego in the back seat. But before we get there, I just want to pause for a second. And I'm going to let you think about that. And I'm just going to welcome anybody who has just joined us. You're late, but we're not judging. This is Tea Time. And I'm sitting here with author Christian de la Huerta and longtime friend of Unity on the Bay. And we're talking about his new book, Awakening the Soul. And Tea Time is all about you getting to know my guests, but also getting to ask them questions live in the comment section. So people have been quiet today. I don't see any questions, just a lot of comments in the section. So this is a good time if you have questions about anything we've been talking about, the ego, the soul, what it means to be a hero. Ask your questions in the comments. I just want to give out a shout out to Angie Marrero. She says, one of my spiritual teachers, Christian de la Huerta. So, and I just want to give a shout out to Denise. Good morning, Denise. Thanks for joining us. Good morning, Carlos Perez. He actually says, magnificently explained. Thanks. I think that was regarding the soul and the ego. So remember, ask your questions in the comment section and we'll pause from time to time to get them answered. So Christian, tell us, give us a life story of yours when the ego was telling you to do something and you went and did the opposite.
All right. So, the Goddess Temple, which is a big house that I rent in Coconut Grove.
Beautiful.
And honors, it's a place where I do workshops on retreats and honoring all the traditions, all the spiritual traditions, but has a particular dedication to the sacred feminine, because we've been so out of balance, for the last several thousand years in terms of the masculine and the feminine. And, so I'm doing my part in balancing that part. And of course, we know that it has to start. If we expect to see that in the world, it's got to start here. So I'm going to have to synthesize the story because it's a great story, but it's long. So
it's okay.
I was tricked to come back to Miami from Northern California, where I'd been for 20 years. Tricked by the universe. I had no desire or intention to come back, and I'm really grateful now. But to get me down here, I had to be tricked. So I rented another house in Miami Shores in the northern part of Miami. And I think I was there for 3 years. On the same morning, because the owner put it up for sale and it was on the market for 2 years. And then on the same morning that I get an email from his realtor that the house had sold. They had accepted an offer. That night, I'm doing a breathwork session, and in the deepest, quietest, most still point towards the end, bam, bam, bam. Somebody knocking on the door. I opened the door, and they had driven all the way up in the yard. The lights staring me in the face. Irate guy, one of the boyfriend of the next door neighbor, because somebody had parked on their freshly laid lawn. So I knew I had nothing to do about that. I had nothing to do about that. I didn't, I knew that it was like the universe saying, "Hey, we've outgrown this neighborhood." And I had about 6 weeks to find another place. And I think 3 of the weeks I was already scheduled to travel. Thanksgiving was the last week, because I had to be out by December 1st, and nothing happens during Thanksgiving week usually. So I really had 2 weeks to find another place. I must have seen 10, 12 places, and nothing really worked. Even when I tried to force it, stretch myself. Well, yeah, people could park, they were 3 blocks away. And I tried to force it to make it work. And then something weird would happen. In one case, I went from yes to no to yes. And then I said the final no when this place showed up. So it's Thanksgiving night, and I'm picking up a couple of friends who from, who didn't have family down here. So I picked up one on the beach, and then I come here to Coconut Grove, picking up another friend. And Coconut Grove has always been my favorite part of Miami. It's been it's the oldest bohemian part of Miami, old, lush vegetation. And as I'm driving to his house, I'm saying, oh, it's too bad that there's no parking in Coconut Grove, because now parking has become an issue. I'm thinking about the other part of Coconut Grove, which is denser. I wouldn't have occurred to me to even think of this part of it, because I would have never thought I could afford this part of Coconut Grove. So it didn't even cross my mind. And so I turn right at the Hare Krishna temple. I pull up into his driveway, and I'm texting him, "Hey, we're outside." And in that instant comes in another text from Janelle, who's also a friend of Janelle Gates, is a friend of Unity as well. And her mom's a realtor, Maria. And they had just done a retreat at the old temple. And she goes, "Hey, I know it's Thanksgiving, and you're probably not even thinking about this. And I know you're working with another realtor, but I felt compelled. I felt driven to get online and look for you. And this house popped up, and it's in Coconut Grove, which got my attention because I had just had that thought. And they just reduced it by $1,000. And I said, all right, well, text me the address. She texted me the address. I know the neighborhood. And she goes, really? I said, really? All right, I'll play. I'll go see it. So we go there. We come back, and I'm coming up the driveway, and it's like, oh, parking is not going to be an issue here, because there has a back area with good parking for like a good 20 cars, and then a driveway for another 8 or 10. So I said, all right, I'll play. So let's go see it. So the next day on Friday, she called or texted the realtor 3 times, because the realtor told her, no, I think he's renting it to a friend. The third time she goes, look, you don't understand. This guy is your ideal tenant, and this is his house. And so the woman laughed, and she goes, all right, come see it. In the meantime, I write this email through the realtors, to the owner, letting him know that I was going to use the house treat the house as a temple. I don't even wear shoes in the house, like really honor it. And so on Saturday, we come to see the house, and it was Janelle, Maria, her mom, Allie, my other friend, 3 gorgeous women, and myself. And we do the tour, and I'm like, wow. And standing downstairs, and the same owner owns the house next door, which is like an event house where they do weddings and receptions and that kind of thing. And so I'm telling the realtor, my concern is the noise from next door, because I do meditation retreats. I didn't want to have to explain breath work. And you can say, it's legitimately is a type of meditation. So the owner, turns out, had just shown up, and the realtor told me he had never come to meet a tenant. So he shakes my hand and holds on to it for a long time, and I could feel energy exchange. And he goes, oh, I heard that you're concerned about the noise, and I want you to be reassured. The music stops at 11 on the dot. True. On the dot, the music ends. And he goes, the way that where they play the music, you're probably not going to hear it. Not true. You definitely hear it. So we all go back around the house, and run into a peacock. And not 2 weeks before, Maria or her mom had been wearing something with a peacock, a t-shirt, a purse or something. So we got into this whole conversation about the spiritual significance of peacock. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, interesting. But that would not have been enough, right? To my little ego mind, like, no, I need bigger signs.
Yeah, these are just coincidences. Your ego's
thinking. Good, that's good, but no, I need more. Because I'm taking out an extra $1,000 a month. And so we get to the central courtyard of the house next door, and we run into my nephew with his fiance, now wife, and her mom, and they've all come to breathe, so they know, my posse. And this is where it gets like, who makes this stuff? Who makes this stuff up, right? Who synchronizes this stuff? Turns out my nephew, Nikki, went to middle school with Janelle. They haven't seen each other in years, right? And so suddenly it's like, oh my God, what are you doing? Hello, hello, kiss, kiss. And the owner's looking at me like, what's going on here? It's like, I actually knew at the handshake, but now there's no question, right? And so from my limited perspective, it's like, I would have said, no, are you kidding? That house? It's like, it's too expensive. I could never do that. But I said, all right, I'll play. Let's see what happens. Let's see what's cooking up here. And then the story goes on. I'm not going to, take more time with it, but the financial miracles that followed, it's like mind-boggling. Yeah.
And how long have you been in that house? Because that's where you're at right now. You're sitting in that house. Yeah.
That's where I am right now. I think it's approaching 10 years.
Wow. And that house is that temple, as you call it, it's beautiful. I've been there.
It's beautiful. And what makes it is the location, which is, a block away from Biscayne Bay.
Yeah.
So stunning property.
We actually have some questions that came in as you were sharing that story. So let's see what David Park has to say here. And I'm going to put this on the screen right now. He goes, love how Christian explains this. My question is how we continue to fuel the soul, how we continually remind ourselves that this is the ego, the baseball, and not the stadium.
Hey, David. What a beautiful question. And we know this, we know this stuff. It's like, what are the practices, right? That remind us, right? It's so easy to get distracted by life and all because life is so dramatic and the ego is so dramatic. So the ego thrives on that drama and it feeds off of that. The voice of the stadium of the soul is that still quiet voice inside, right? Which is we have to quiet that crazy, what the Buddhists call the monkey mind, right? That ego mind that jumps from thought to thought in the same way that the monkey goes from branch to branch. So we have to learn how to quiet it so that we can access the deep wisdom, the truth of the soul, of the higher self that's inside every one of us, and where all the answers to all our questions are, right? So whatever practices, whatever we need to do so that we can learn how to do that. I mean, not learn because it's there. There's nothing to learn. It's just quieting the mind. So whether it's formal meditation practice or going for a beach for a beach walk or a hike in the mountains or whatever it is that we can do to quiet that mind, and it takes a little bit of practice. That's all it is, right? But so until it becomes second nature, and we have ready access to that voice of wisdom and truth. And then part of it too is learning how to know who's speaking, right? Who's talking inside of our heads. So simple way to look at it. Whenever we find ourselves building a case, pulling from here, pulling from there, the ego went to law school. So totally, right? It's always building a case as to why it's right. And to put itself, at top of the heap, top dog. Whenever we find ourselves pulling from here, looking for concepts, big words, ego, right? That other part of us, it's that still, quiet voice inside that has very simple languaging and messages. So it might say things like, yes, do that. I wouldn't go there. When do we get into trouble? Every time is when we override it and we go there anyway, every time. Every time. And
David,
little things, right? Like even like I just did it 2 days ago. Was I was going for a breakfast meeting with a couple of colleagues outdoors, and it was the first time that I was going back to this outdoor restaurant here in the Grove since March, and it was cloudy. It looked like it had been raining, so I left my sunglasses, which I had brought inside from the car. And as I get in the car, it's like, I just knew, right? I knew that to go pick them up. But nah, you know how we are. We get lazy. It's like, no, I don't want to take more time. I don't want to be late. I got to park and all that kind of stuff. So I overrode that, left the sunglasses, of course. I sat at breakfast with the sun, staring me in the face until I moved myself. But so it's a little simple example, but we do that all the time. Yeah.
David, I hope that answered your question. Let us know in the comment section. But we also have a question from Sandra Taggle, which I love Sandra. She's also a longtime friend of Unity on the Bays and a friend of mine. And she says, I am more in the phase of integration. Integrate darkness and light within. At the end is kind of the same. What does he think about insisting just to go to the light? So I guess she's saying like just kind of focusing on the good, or
yeah.
What do you think?
A piece, and I can't remember if it's in this book or the next book of the series. But anyway, the piece, it was an article I wrote a couple of years ago, but it's part of the book. It was intended to be part of the book, and the title of it is "You Can't Namaste the Shadow Away."
I love that.
Yeah, right? Because there's so much in the spiritual community. It's like, oh, everything is love and light, love and light, love. And yes, ultimately true, but bullshit too, right? We can't jump over. We can't do the spiritual bypassing. If we want to be healed, if we want to be whole, if we want to step into our power and our purpose, we can't jump over the stuff that's not healed. We got to look into that. We got to deal with it. We got to heal it. We got to, not just jump over it. And there's that concept, spiritually bypassing. And so with all due respect, and of course, in the ultimate sense, yes, everything is love and light, but in the day-to-day, we have to be willing, and that's what heroes do, right? It's so much easier to go love and light and sit on a meditation cushion all day, but to be willing to go in and to face ourselves, to face our inner demons, all the stuff that happened in the past, the traumas, the times that we felt betrayed or lied to, and but the beauty of that is when we're willing to do that, right? We can go with layers. Like we realize that something that's happening here in the present that we're reacting to and feeling betrayed or cheated or whatever the feeling is, that if we are willing to do the work and go into it and like go into the deeper layers of what we're really feeling, what we get to is to some core issues that happened a long time ago and that we have been reliving and reenacting until we heal it. And so it's heroic work, right? To be willing to remember stuff and feel stuff and go into stuff that is not fun to do. It's not fun to remember that stuff, and that's not fun to remember, to feel some of those feelings. But it is so worthwhile, because once we do that, then we can actually heal it, and then we're free. Like that's how we set ourselves free. And that's both the subtitle that you were pointing to. How do we live heroically? Well, that's how we do it, so that we can set ourselves free.
As you were saying that, I remember the age-old phrase is not what you say, it's how you say it. And that to me is a very wise statement, because when you're saying, oh, it's all love and light, at least for me, like if I'm doing something outwardly that's not in alignment with how I'm feeling inside, it feels so fake. And like when you go, oh, it's all love and light, but you feel this like internal, like, well, that's not really how I'm feeling right now. And we all know when something's coming from the ego when you say it, because it's charged. It is like emotionally charged, like, and you feel it inside when you say it. Like there's a huge difference between saying you shouldn't do that and saying, that hurt me and this is why, and I'd really like you not to do that again. And you're still speaking your truth, but it might not be coming from a place of the lawyer ego, as you say. The ego that went to law school.
Yes, and I want to say one more thing to Sandra, which is thank you. Thank you for being willing to go inside and to integrate all of us, right? That's what integrity means. Integrity comes from the word integer. So integrity is not about, doing moral stuff or yes or no's or doing things out of integrity. Integrity means wholeness, right? Integer, whole number. So the only way that we can be in integrity is when we reclaim all of who we are and all parts of our rejected humanity, no matter what it is, right? All the stuff that we have suppressed and don't want to look at and don't want to feel. And then the big parts of us, that we've stuck in the back of a closet somewhere. And all the stuff that we diminish and not express because of the fear of rejection or failure or success, right? Whatever you were talking about earlier is like, what is the fear of really stepping into all of who we are and to answering that voice, that call? Like, what might happen? Might I have to, it's like, that's the stuff of heroes.
We are actually out of time, but I'm going to go a little bit over because I'm enjoying this conversation. So if you have a couple more minutes, Christian, we'll keep you on.
I'm enjoying
it. I think I'm going to schedule another tea time with you because there's so much in this book that we didn't get to cover. But I just want to hold up your book again and just tell people you can purchase this on Amazon. Is that how you like people to purchase it, Christian?
Wherever they want. Wherever they want. It's available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and a bunch of online websites, and at your local bookstore. So, Books and Books, wherever, and here in Miami, wherever you buy your books.
And I don't think we said it often when we were talking, but this is the first book of 3, correct?
Yeah.
So get it now and start reading it so you can be ready for when part 2 comes out. But we are also super blessed to have Christian doing a workshop next Saturday, Unity on the Bay online, and it's called Power Matters. And so if you are hearing anything during tea time that's resonating with you, check in and say, do I want to dive more deeply into this? And you can with Christian next Saturday online at 10 a.m. You do have to register for it at unityonthebay.org. And there's an early bird special that's ending tomorrow, Sunday. So if you're interested, go to the website and sign up today or tomorrow so you can save some money on it. And then you get to spend 2 hours with Christian diving into some of this stuff. Did I miss anything there, Christian?
No, I think it's great. And I'm so honored to be, working and doing another workshop at Unity. I love Unity and have met such amazing, beautiful people through the Unity community and family. So I'm delighted to be back. I also, if people want to dive deeper, there's I started a Facebook group, Unleashing Your Inner Hero. And there's one of the group members. So it's to support all of us, right? To step into our power, to step into our purpose, to do whatever we got to do. It's like, from my perspective, this is all hands on deck, right? We're in the most critical time in the evolution of humanity. You could say make it or break it point. The planet's going to be fine. It might take a few million years, but life will continue. Life will find homeostasis again. Maybe it's a planet of intelligent, conscious cockroaches. Who knows? Whether we make it in this form, right? We're just now beginning to witness, and so undeniable for us here in South Florida, the effects of whatever we have unleashed on the environment. And which is the real big crisis that looms behind the other, the other 2 or 3 crises that we're facing right now. That's the big one. That's yet to come. So when one of us makes the choice and says yes and answers that call to step into whatever role we're called to, and we get to express that role in whatever way we want to, and we're called to do. But to step into the role of teachers, of healers, of heroes, leaders, right? All these words that we have struggled with, we just don't have time for that struggle anymore. It's like we got to step into them, right? And this is the time that we've been waiting for. Like if we've had the tiniest inkling or suspicion that we have work to do on this planet in terms of healing, teaching, activists for change, this is it. And so that's what the group is about, is to support us to do that. And there's somebody who spontaneously is leading a book group. A book club, right? So there's a group of people reading the book together. So anyway, that's it.
Nice. What was the name of that Facebook group again?
Unleashing Your Inner Hero, or Unleash Your Inner Hero.
Okay, I'm going to actually put that in the chat right now, so that if you want to join that Facebook group, you can. It sounds awesome. Christian, you're an inspiration to me, and you're an inspiration to so many. I know that, and thank you for doing the work you do, because I'm sure there's some overcoming that you've gone through with the ego.
Yes, my God, yes. And not only with the ego, with 30 years of working with my ego. And just to reassure everybody that it gets easier, it becomes second nature, right? It just becomes second nature. And the teachings that I share in the book, some of which I inherited from a teacher, a guru that I studied with for 5 years, and I've been, of course, expanding them and expressing them in my own way for the last 30 years. They work. They simply work. It's like as I start out in the book, I am an unlikely person to be talking about personal power and heroism. Like, I came out of such self-doubt and self-hatred even. My teenage years were one long depression. So I know this stuff works. And these days, no matter what happens, this relationship works out or it doesn't. This project succeeds or fails, right? No matter what happens, no matter what the circumstances of my life, I never, ever question my self-worth, ever. So I know this stuff works.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing that I do at every tea time as we close is I ask my guests to look into the camera and talk to the world. And if there's one thing that you want to leave people with that might be watching it now, next year, 30 years from now, what is the most important thing you want to convey to them?
You can do this. You can do this. And we need you. We need you.
I love that. Thank you, Christian. It's been awesome. And like I said, I'm going to schedule another tea time with you because we're not done with this conversation.
I would love that.
I would love that too. And I really urge anybody who's watching, pick up this book. I know a lot of you are spending extra time at home. Pick it up, read it. It's a gem. And Christian, you did an awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. Much love.
Much love to you. I'll talk to you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Positive Spiritual Living Podcast, brought to you by Unity on the Bay, a spiritual community located in Miami, Florida. Unity on the Bay is supported by the generosity of its community. If you'd like to make a donation or learn more about Unity on the Bay, please visit unityonthebay.org. You can also follow Unity on the Bay on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for even more positive spiritual inspiration. Until next time, thanks for listening and many blessings. Namaste.